Hello and welcome to this Neat Image basic workflow guide. For this tutorial I'm going to assume that you've either downloaded the trial or the full version of Neat Image for Photoshop and that you have installed it on your system, and that you've either downloaded one of the sample images or the test kit or one of your own images are open ready for us to work. Once that's done, what we need to do is apply Neat Image. This is done through the filter menu here at the top of Photoshop. Click Filter, and then towards the bottom you have Neat Image, Reduce Noise version 8. And when you click on that, it opens up Neat Image. Now, Neat Image may have come in looking like that or that. This is the standard way it comes in. Bear in mind that there is a drop down here that allows you to see it in different ways. There's even an opportunity to see red, green, blue channels. However, usually for this it's going to be a lot better to go for the standard default Profile Assist option, and I'm going to actually do it as 2x2 because I think that looks good on the screen. So what am I seeing? I'm seeing the original image over here, and then at the bottom I'm seeing the color channels of that image, and at the side I'm seeing just the luminance value. So the grey one is the luminance, the CR and CB are the color channels. And what I can see very quickly is a detailed understanding of the noise. Now in here I can see it's a noisy shot, but when I look at the luminance channel I can see that there's lots of small fine noise, which is perhaps what I'm seeing here. But I can also see by looking at the two chrominance channels that I've got some very big noise, some lumpy noise. Now I'm going to be clicking the Auto Profile button in just a moment. Neat Image is going to analyze this photo, and it's going to look for an area which has no detail. And what do we mean by this? So detail would be, for example, these lampposts, or the actual bird's nest background here, or the little lines on the path. These are details, these are not noise, and you need to avoid those. However, if you look at the sky, you can see that the sky has got no details, but it has got lots of noise, and that's exactly what Neat Image is looking for. Lots of noise, no details, because it wants to build a noise profile. In other words, to understand exactly what the noise is as opposed to the details of the image, so that when it filters out the noise and leaves the image and detail untouched. So when I click the Auto Profile, Neat Image analyzes the shot and comes up with a suggested area. Now this is just a suggestion. Usually, 9 times out of 10, Neat Image is going to get this right every time. And when we look at these shots here, we can see that there's pretty much no detail here, although possibly we've got part of the lens flare there. There's certainly nothing here or nothing here. But if you hover over the image and use your center mouse wheel to scroll forward, you can see you will zoom in. And as you zoom in, you get a better idea of what's going on. And if, say, you were unhappy about this lens flare, this lens aberration here, and you wanted to move this item, you can simply click and move it. It turns green as soon as you move it, and it tells you what the noise level is. Now previously it came up with a noise level of 22, and if I move it, does it change? No, actually it's gone down slightly. So we're trying to get this number as high as it's going to go. But what I mustn't do is say move it to here, because this area contains detail and that's not good. And clearly you can see there's a warning sign telling you this is not a good selection, and we want to avoid all warnings. However, what you can do, I'm going to zoom out slightly, is you can actually move the image, make it bigger or smaller and move it across and see if you get a better result. That's not actually changed anything. What if I move it over here? Does that change anything? Well, it actually has made a very slight difference. I just need to zoom in and make sure, yep, that's not actually touching anything. So I've got a slightly better result by moving it. What am I looking for? I'm going to go over it again. I'm looking for an area which is just noise and no detail, and I can see that from all the 3 channels, from the luminance channel and from the color channels and from the image itself. As much as possible, I'm also looking for an area which is mid-bright, not too dark black, not too white, and I'm also avoiding any of those warning signs. You can change the size of this. That's saying it's very small, and you can get very small indeed, but notice that it clearly tells you that big is good. The bigger, the better. Now, if you have moved this box, this is important. If you've moved it, you must recheck the Auto Profile button. So if I click on that again, you can see it analyzes the image again, my noise profile is now set up. There's one other thing to see. It is this quality slider over here, which is telling me that Neat Image thinks I've got a really good noise profile. However, the proof of the whole thing is in the noise reduction we see in the final image. And so in the next section, we're going to look at our filter, see how good it is, and then adjust the filter settings if we feel they need to be adjusted. Now we've built a good noise profile, the next thing we can do is go across to the Noise Filter Settings tab and make any adjustments if they're needed. Now, it's important to say, if you get the noise profile correct, you shouldn't need to make settings because it's going to work on the profile that you've built. So the more time you spent getting a really good noise profile, which is featureless, with just noise and mid-bright without any warnings, and also as big as you can manage to get the best result, the more accurate the noise profile will be, the less you will need to do in the noise filter settings. So I'm going to go to the noise filter settings, and you can see instantly we've got a filtered result. To see an unfiltered result, simply click on the image and you can see before and after. And if your computer's not very fast, you can actually click and drag an area and you can see filtered, unfiltered. So just see a smaller area. And I'm going to work on a smaller area. In fact, what I'll do is I'll just zoom into this smaller area so we can see it. So we're just going to play with these settings looking at this area here. Now usually sharpening would be closed and you've got these two sliders. Now let's talk about these two sliders. Firstly, if I hover over the luminance slider, it gives me a tooltip. Adjust amount of noise reduction applied to luminance channel component. Now this slider is about adjusting your personal preference for the final amount of noise reduction. So we've got a good noise profile, but if it's not enough for you, you can actually turn this up. So its default setting is 60%. I can click 70%. I can click again 80%, and you can see it is actually making a difference. You can see the unfiltered and the filtered side by side. This resets it. So if I reset it back to 60, you can see that visibly there's a bit more noise, and the higher I go up, the less noise it becomes. You can overdo this and become quite a smooth end result if you're not careful. So you're looking for something that looks good but isn't over filtered. If you do feel you need to take this slider up quite high, you can enable sharpening. So let's talk briefly about sharpening. You can enable sharpening by clicking the button here, but if I just open it up beforehand, you'll see that it's going to try and sharpen areas of large detail, medium detail and fine detail. So for example, fine detail might include the leaves of the trees, and the larger detail might include the elements of the actual building structure itself. So if you're going to enable sharpening because you're not happy with the results, make sure that you select an area that includes everything that you want to cover. So we've got leaves, faces, the building areas. Then you can enable sharpening and look at the difference before and after and play with the sliders. It's very difficult to show this on a training video due to compression, so I'm not going to play with the sliders. Merely say that you can enable it, pull it up and have a look, or pull it down and have a look. One point I do want to make, however, is that it is quite easy to over sharpen. So what I would recommend you do is get it to the point where it looks sharp and then perhaps look at pulling the areas back just to make sure that you don't over sharpen your image. So I'm just going to leave these at standard settings because I think, well actually, you know what, I might just apply a little bit of large just to get those a little bit sharper on these items. Now what about this final slider, this noise level slider? Now this is an objective slider, and what I mean by that is it says adjust estimation of image noise level relative to the profile you've created. You've created a profile. So if I go back here, you created a profile here. Now the slider is going to say, is this profile accurate or not accurate? Okay, now if you've done a really good job of creating a noise profile, you shouldn't need to touch this at all. However, if you think that your noise profile isn't very accurate, you can actually pull it up and it says more items are considered noise, so it will do a greater amount of filtering. However, it's probably going to be filtering things that aren't really noise. Or if you think you've got items that shouldn't be there, you could pull it down. Generally speaking, you shouldn't need to touch any of these, because if you get the noise profile correct, it's going to do a great job. Okay, so that's how we can adjust the filter settings. The final part of this quick start guide is simply applying, and once you've done your filtering and you're happy with how it all looks, you can go down to the apply button down here, click apply, and then you're back in Photoshop. It's processed the image, and now you can see the final image with all the noise removed. So that's how you can apply it inside of Photoshop. Well, thank you for watching the basic workflow. As you can see, I've actually removed the filter because there's one other thing I want to point out to you. That neat image is far deeper than what we've covered today. So I'm going to apply neat image again by going to the filter and go to neat image, reduce noise version 8. And when it comes in, I just want to show you one other thing, that we have been working in the beginner mode. And there is, if you click on beginner mode, the opportunity to go to the advanced mode. And when you go to the advanced mode, what you're going to find is that there are lots of ways of refining the filter, the noise profile that you create. So this is just the device noise profile, and we can go in there and we can add to any auto profile that we've created. We can make it much more detailed. And then when you move over to the noise filter settings, zoom in a bit, you'll see that you've also got quality modes. Now, ideally, you want to be working on the highest quality. And if you do work on the highest quality, it might say everything's going slower. That's fair enough. However, you don't have to process the whole image every time. You can select a small portion which you can move around and just be working with smaller areas to make sure things are better, to speed up the end result. Ideally, you want to be working with the quality mode highest, because that opens up various other options that you can't use unless you're in highest. You can see there are lots of additional ways of refining your filtering. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you can see that there are things like artifact removal, detail recovery, and if you are in highest quality, it is going to be best for detail recovery, incidentally. And also, while we're talking about speed, I ought to say that there is a performance tab, and it's available in advanced and beginner mode, where if you go into the preferences, you can choose how neat image uses the items in your machine. So is it CPU and GPU only, or CPU only? CPU only is probably going to be the slowest option if you've got a half decent graphics card. And if you've got a good graphics card and you've got a good processor, you're going to find that it's going to make a lot of difference to the speed of processing, and you can check out the speed here, which I'm not going to do, but you can just go between them and see the difference of processing. So I'm going to cancel that. I'm going to go back to advanced mode. Now, the way that we want you to work with neat image is that we want you to start with the beginner mode, make sure you've got the basic workflow sorted out, and then very quickly start to work with advanced mode all the time, so that you can create better results. It takes a bit more learning, yes, but you're going to find that you get very quick with it the more you do. And if you need to know how to find things out, remember there's a help menu. You can go to help or just hit F1, and there is a neat image user guide PDF available for you to go in and have a look at and work out how to do these things and find lots of amazingly good and helpful information. Of course, there are also user forums on the web, and of course there is email support if you're really stuck. So start with a basic workflow, but remember it is far deeper than what we've already covered, and you'll find that if you've got issues with noise, Neat Image is going to be able to address pretty much all of them. Well, we hope you found this Neat Image basic workflow tutorial useful, and on behalf of Neat Image, thank you very much for watching.